Walk the strip today and something feels different. You can't quite name it at first. The buildings are still there, massive, glittering, blocking out the desert sky. The lights still flash in that seizure-inducing Vegas way. The crowds still gather on weekend nights, flowing between casinos like they always have. But something is missing. Something feels less. You walk through a casino you remember from 5 years ago, past the entrance, past the slot machines, toward the restaurant row that used to be packed with options. And there's a door that's locked now, a window that's dark, a space where a restaurant used to be. You ate there once, you're almost sure, and now it's just nothing. Empty, a gate pulled down, a sign removed, like it was never there. You keep walking and there's another one, and another. Dark spaces where life used to be. The strip isn't collapsing in one dramatic moment. There's no explosion, no single building imploding in a cloud of dust while tourists cheer. It's shrinking quietly, steadily, piece by piece disappearing while the facade stays polished and the lights keep flashing. The strip is getting smaller, and almost nobody is talking about it. Not physically smaller, the buildings remain. The towers still pierce the skyline. The footprint on the map looks the same. But what's inside those buildings? What's actually available to guests? What experiences exist behind those glittering facades? That's shrinking, contracting, hollowing out from within. Restaurants you remember gone, not moved, not renovated, not rebranded, gone. Empty spaces where tables used to be. Clubs that used to pulse with bass until 4 a.m. dark. Doors locked, the velvet ropes removed because there's no line to manage anymore. Buffets that anchored entire properties, that people flew in specifically to experience closed permanently. The serving stations dismantled, the abundance replaced with drywall. Shows that ran for decades that defined what Vegas entertainment meant shuttered. The theaters sitting empty, the marquees advertising nothing. The strip is disappearing, not all at once, in pieces, and no one is sounding the alarm because each piece vanishes quietly enough to ignore. Today, I'm showing you the quiet shrinkage. The restaurants that closed and never reopened, the venues that went dark and stayed dark, the amenities that vanished between visits, the services that were cut so quietly you didn't notice until you needed them. The physical footprint of what the strip actually offers, the real square footage of experiences available to guests contracting month by month, quarter by quarter. Not the buildings themselves, what's inside them? The strip is hollowing out from within, becoming a shell of what it was built to be. And the hollowing is accelerating. Every month, another closure. Every quarter, more dark spaces. The strip getting smaller while pretending nothing has changed. If you're new here, I track what's actually happening behind the Vegas illusion. Not the grand openings that generate press releases, the quiet closures that don't, not the ribbon cuttings, the locked doors, not what they want you to see. What's actually there and what isn't anymore. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, because the shrinking strip explains why Vegas feels different now, why something seems missing even when you can't name what, why you walk through a casino and feel a vague sense of loss without knowing exactly what you're mourning. The strip is getting smaller, understanding how and why explains everything. Let me take you on a tour of what's disappeared. The restaurants and clubs and shows and amenities that used to exist, that you might remember visiting, that were landmarks, institutions, reasons people chose specific properties. Gone now, simply gone. The list is longer than you think. It's longer than the casinos want you to realize, and it's growing every month, every week as more pieces of the strip quietly vanish. Let me show you what's missing. Start with restaurants, the most visible casualties, the easiest to notice if you're paying attention. Walk through any major property, not on a Saturday night when the crowds provide cover, on a Tuesday afternoon when the emptiness shows. Count the dark spaces, the restaurants that closed during the pandemic and never reopened 3 years later, still dark. The ones that shuttered quietly last year with a small announcement buried in a trade publication. The dining rooms that just vanished between your visits. The gates pulled down, the windows papered over, the signage removed like the restaurant never existed. Sometimes you can still see the outline where letters used to hang. The ghost of a name. Celebrity chef outposts that opened with press coverage and closed with silence. Signature dining rooms that anchored properties gone. Steakhouses that weren't branded with famous names but delivered solid meals couldn't survive. Coffee shops that served you at 3 a.m. after a long night at the tables dark now. closed, not coming back. The buffets. This one hurts. The Bellagio Buffet, an institution, a reason people booked that property specifically. The brunch spread that felt like abundance made physical, the crab legs, the made-to-order eggs, the dessert station that went on forever. Gone, closed, not temporarily shut down for renovation, permanently erased. The Rio Seafood Buffet that people, actual human beings, flew across the country specifically to experience. The all-you-can-eat crab and lobster that felt like getting away with something. A pilgrimage for buffet lovers. Gone. The Rio itself barely surviving, the buffet a memory. Walk the strip and count the buffets that remain. Then remember how many used to exist. The Caesars Buffet, the MGM Grand Buffet. Property after property that had these massive, elaborate, loss-leading temples to access. Nearly all of them gone, closed during the pandemic and never reopened because someone did the math and decided the math didn't work anymore. The abundance that made Vegas feel like Vegas. The overwhelming, ridiculous, gloriously excessive piles of food that made you feel like a winner before you'd lost a single dollar. Erased. Replaced with nothing. The spaces converted to meeting rooms or retail that sits empty or just walls. Dead space where feasts used to happen. It's not just the buffets. It's the whole middle. The mid-tier restaurants that gave guests options. The places that weren't celebrity-branded experiences charging $70 for an entree. The places that weren't fast food, the middle ground. Italian restaurants with red sauce and checkered tablecloths. Asian spots with reasonable prices and reliable quality. The steakhouse that charged $40 for a ribeye instead of $120. The places normal people ate when they wanted a real meal without a special occasion. Vanishing, closing, not being replaced. What's left is the extremes. The ultra-premium restaurants that charge $500 for a tasting menu, and the fast casual garbage that charges $18 for a mediocre burger. The middle is disappearing. The options are thinning. The dining landscape that used to offer something for everyone now offers extremes and gaps. You walk through the restaurant row and there's a celebrity steakhouse for $200 per person. Then darkness. Then a Shake Shack. Then more darkness. Then another celebrity concept you can't afford. The middle where regular tourists used to eat. Gone. Just gone. But the restaurants are just the beginning. The most visible casualties. The easiest to notice because everyone eats and everyone remembers where they ate. Walk deeper into the properties, past the restaurant row, into the spaces where the nightlife used to live, where the entertainment used to happen, where the casino floor used to pulse with energy. You'll find something worse. Entire sections going dark. Clubs that used to define Vegas nightlife shuttered. Doors that don't open anymore. Velvet ropes removed because there's nobody to let in. Entertainment venues sitting empty, showrooms dark for months between bookings, theaters converted to meeting space because there's no act willing to perform to empty seats. Even the casino floors, the literal reason these buildings exist, are contracting. Slot machines turned off, table games roped closed, entire pits dark because there aren't enough players to justify the dealers. The Strip isn't just closing restaurants. It's abandoning square footage, letting pieces of itself go dark because there's no business to justify keeping the lights on. The shrinkage goes deeper than dining. The hollowing goes further than you've noticed. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The Strip is getting smaller from the inside out. The Strip used to be dense, overwhelming, packed with options at every turn. Walk through a casino and there was always another restaurant around the corner, another bar tucked into an alcove, another show advertised on the walls, another club pulsing somewhere in the building, another reason to stay on property, another experience waiting to be had. The abundance was the point. Vegas hit you with options, overwhelmed you with possibilities, made you feel like you couldn't possibly experience everything in one visit, which is exactly why you'd come back. That density is evaporating. The options are disappearing. The overwhelming abundance is becoming sparse emptiness. The Strip is becoming less, not just in restaurants, in everything. Let me show you what's going dark. The clubs are dying. The mega clubs that defined Vegas nightlife for a generation shrinking, shuttering, fading into irrelevance. Marquee at the Cosmopolitan, Hakkasan at MGM Grand, Omnia at Caesars, XS at Wynn, Names that used to mean something, venues that people flew across the country specifically to experience. Where bottle service ran into the tens of thousands and the lines stretched around the building and the dance floor didn't stop until the sun came up. Walk past them now on a random weekend. Look at the hours, reduced, not open Thursday anymore, not open Sunday anymore, operating fewer nights because the crowds that justified 7 nights a week don't exist anymore. Look at the energy, diminished, the lines shorter, the desperation of promoters more visible, the sense that this is the center of something gone. Some have closed entirely. Others operate as shells of themselves. The venues that once generated hundreds of millions in revenue, that made Vegas the nightlife capital of America contracting. The day clubs, the pool parties that seemed like the future of Vegas entertainment, the innovation that justified massive investment, entire pool complexes rebuilt to accommodate thousands of people drinking in the sun. Same story. Worse, maybe. Look at the operating schedules. Fewer days. Marquee Day Club not open on weekdays anymore. Encore Beach Club scaling back. The pool parties that used to run 5 days a week now running 3 or 2 or only for special events. The DJ fees that seemed reasonable when 10,000 people paid cover, they don't make sense when 2,000 show up. The production costs that worked at scale, they don't work at reduced scale. The day clubs are shrinking. The pool parties are dying. The innovation that was supposed to define the next era of Vegas entertainment retreating. The nightlife is shrinking. The clubs going dark. The pool parties scaling back. The energy that used to radiate from these venues, the sense that Vegas was the center of the party universe, it's dimming. Literally dimming. The lights going off, the doors staying closed. But here's what really tells the story of shrinkage. Walk past the clubs, past the restaurants, onto the casino floor itself. Look at the spaces that used to be packed with slot machines and table games. Look at what's there now. Or more accurately, look at what's not there. Casino floors are shrinking. Not the buildings themselves, the active gaming space inside them. Walk through a property on a Tuesday afternoon. Don't look at the players. Look at the machines. Count the slot machines that are turned off. Not broken, you can tell the difference. Turned off, powered down. Dark screens in rows that used to flash and chime. Silent because there aren't enough players to justify the electricity. Count the table games that are closed. Blackjack tables with the chairs stacked on top. Roulette wheels covered with vinyl. Craps tables roped off with little signs that say closed, not for this hour, not for this shift, just closed. Entire pits dark, sections of floor that used to buzz with action, with dealers shuffling and chips clicking and players laughing silent now, roped off, empty. The lights above them dimmed or off entirely, the carpet showing wear because nobody walks there anymore, the ghosts of games that used to be dealt. Some properties have gone further than just closing sections. They've physically consolidated. Moved walls, reduced the actual footprint of the gaming floor, converted what used to be casino space into other things. Convention space, meeting rooms, because conventions still bring people and gaming doesn't bring enough. Retail, stores that sit empty half the time, but at least they're not bleeding money on dealers who have no one to deal to, or nothing, just walls. Corridors that lead to doors that don't open, the architecture of shrinkage. The casino floor, the reason these buildings exist, the engine that's supposed to power everything else, the core of the entire business model contracting. Less gaming space, fewer tables, fewer machines, fewer options for the players who do show up. The core of the strip getting smaller, restaurants closing, clubs shrinking, casino floors contracting. But wait, there's more, because we haven't even talked about entertainment yet. The shows. The productions, the headliner residencies, and the theatrical experiences, and the variety acts that made Vegas more than just gambling. The entertainment that justified the trip for people who didn't even play. That's disappearing too, and the disappearance is accelerating. The shows are vanishing. The theatrical productions that gave Vegas cultural legitimacy closing without successors. Cirque du Soleil built an empire on the Strip. Show after show at property after property. O at Bellagio, KA at MGM Grand, Mystère at Treasure Island, Zumanity at New York, New York. Look at what's left. Look at what's closed. Zumanity gone. Other productions ended. The Cirque presence that seemed permanent, that seemed like it would define Vegas entertainment, forever shrinking. The headliner residencies that used to fill calendars, fewer of them now. The commitment to extended runs shorter. The theaters sitting empty between bookings, weeks, or months with no act, no show, no reason to buy a ticket. The production shows that ran for decades Jubilee, at Bally's. The quintessential Vegas showgirl experience ended, not replaced with something equivalent, just ended. The variety acts, the comedy clubs, the magic shows, the lounges with live music, the entertainment ecosystem that used to exist at every price point, for every taste. Gaps now. Venues dark, showrooms converted to meeting space because conventions pay rent and empty theaters don't. Walk through a property and look for the entertainment listings. Look at how much is actually happening tonight, tomorrow, this week. Compare it to what you remember. The show every night, the lounge act at midnight, the comedy club at 10 and again at 12. The options that made Vegas feel alive after dark. Fewer options now, less variety, less density. The entertainment that used to overflow now carefully rationed. One show instead of 4, one night instead of 7. The Strip that used to be the entertainment capital of the world has less entertainment. Measurably, visibly, obviously less. Restaurants closing, clubs shrinking, casino floors contracting, entertainment disappearing. The physical Strip, the actual square footage of experiences available to guests, is getting smaller every quarter. This isn't random, it's not bad luck, it's not a temporary adjustment that will reverse when conditions improve. There's a reason all of this is happening at once, a cause behind the contraction, a logic to the shrinkage. The math doesn't work anymore. The revenue that used to justify all those restaurants and clubs and shows and square feet of casino floor, it's not there. The customers aren't there. The demand isn't there. So the Strip shrinks, because operating is expensive and shrinking is cheaper. But once you understand the cause, you'll see something worse. You'll see why the shrinking isn't stopping, why it's actually accelerating, why each closure makes the next closure more likely. The Strip isn't just getting smaller, it's caught in a spiral that feeds itself. And spirals don't reverse on their own. Everything shrinking at once isn't coincidence, isn't bad luck, isn't a temporary market correction that will reverse when conditions improve. It's the math, the brutal, inescapable, unforgiving math of a Strip that can't support what it built. The revenue isn't there, the customers aren't there, the demand that justified all those restaurants and clubs and shows and square feet of casino floor, it evaporated. So the Strip shrinks, because shrinking is cheaper than bleeding. Let me show you why it's happening, and why it's only going to get worse. Every restaurant needs customers to justify its existence. Staff costs, food costs, the internal rent that properties charge themselves to account for the square footage, the electricity, the insurance, the maintenance. When the customers stop coming, when the tables sit empty night after night, when the reservations dry up, when the revenue can't cover the costs, the restaurant closes. Simple math, brutal math. Every club needs bottle service and cover charges to cover the DJ fees, the security staff, the bartenders, the promoters, the production costs, the cleaning crew at 5 a.m. When the crowd's thin, when the bottle service slows, when the cover charges don't add up, when 10,000 people become 2,000, the club cuts nights, then closes entirely. Every show needs tickets sold, the performer fees, the production costs, the theater maintenance, the ushers and the technicians and the marketing. When the seats stay empty, when the tickets don't sell, when the revenue can't justify the expense, the show ends, the theater goes dark. The Strip built its infrastructure for a demand that no longer exists. For a Vegas that had more tourists, more gamblers, more people willing to spend money on experiences, more visitors staying on property with time and cash to fill all those restaurants and clubs and shows. That demand is gone, fragmented, scattered, to tribal casinos that captured the gamblers, to phone apps that captured the sports bettors, to Airbnbs that captured the budget travelers, to alternatives everywhere that captured the people who used to fill the Strip. The tourists who do come, many of them don't stay on property anymore. They Uber in, they see the fountains, they eat one meal, they leave. The infrastructure remains, the buildings stand, but the demand that filled them has been hollowed out. So the infrastructure contracts to match reality. The Strip shrinks to fit the demand that's actually there. Revenue down, demand fragmented, infrastructure contracting. That explains why the shrinking is happening, but it doesn't explain the worst part. The trap, the spiral, the doom loop that makes each closure lead to more closures. Because here's what the executives don't want to admit. Every restaurant that closes, every club that goes dark, every show that ends it doesn't just reduce cost. It removes a reason to visit, removes a draw, makes the strip less interesting, which drives more customers away, which forces more closures. The shrinkage feeds itself. Vegas used to win on density, on the overwhelming, ridiculous abundance of options. You came to Vegas because everything was here. Every cuisine you could imagine, every type of nightlife, every entertainment experience, all packed into one 4-mile stretch of road in the middle of the desert. You couldn't go to Miami for this, couldn't go to LA, couldn't go anywhere else in America and find this concentration of excess. Vegas had a monopoly on abundance. That density is dying, the options are thinning, the abundance is becoming scarcity. And here's what happens when density dies. The remaining options can't sustain themselves either. Think about it, 10 restaurants close. The one that survives doesn't get all their customers. It gets some, but the tourists, who came specifically for those 10 other restaurants, they stop coming entirely. They choose Miami instead, or New York, or LA, cities that still have density. Cities that still offer overwhelming options. The Survivor restaurant loses the ecosystem that drove traffic to the whole area. It withers even though it survived. The club that's still open doesn't absorb all the nightlife traffic. It loses the people who came because Vegas was the nightlife capital. Those people find new destinations. The Survivor Club shrinks without the scene that made Vegas worth the trip. Each closure weakens the case for what remains. Each restaurant that shutters removes a reason someone might have visited and bought tickets to the show and played at the tables and drank at the bar. Shrinkage begets shrinkage. Contraction accelerates contraction. The spiral tightens. So where does this end? When does the shrinking stop? When does the strip stabilize at some new equilibrium smaller than it was but sustainable? The honest answer is nobody knows. The spiral hasn't finished spiraling. The contraction hasn't finished contracting. But we can see the trajectory. We can project where this is heading. And what the strip looks like at the end of this shrinkage, it's not pretty. Picture it, the strip after the shrinking stabilizes, the equilibrium point where contraction finally stops, fewer options at every property, one signature restaurant instead of 8, one club instead of 4, if any survive at all, one show instead of a full entertainment calendar, more empty space, shuttered storefronts with gates pulled down, dark venues where music used to play, the sense everywhere that something used to be here but isn't anymore. Casino floors half the size they used to be. The active gaming concentrated in one section while the rest sits dark or gets converted to convention space that sits empty between events. Hotels that feel hollow, long walks past closed doors, escalators that lead to nothing. The infrastructure of abundance repurposed into the architecture of absence. The feeling when you visit? Different, obviously different. You walk through a casino and it feels sparse. Not bustling sparse, not overwhelming with options limited. Not the Vegas that hit you with possibilities at every turn. A Vegas that feels like it's been picked over, reduced, less. Not abandoned, let's be clear. The buildings still stand, the lights still flash, the fountains still dance. But hollowed out, thinned, a shell of what it was built to be. The tourists who remember the old Vegas, the abundance Vegas, the overwhelming Vegas, they'll feel the loss. They'll walk through properties and sense the ghosts of what used to be. The restaurants where they ate, the shows they saw, the energy that used to crackle through every corridor. Gone now, replaced with empty space and locked doors, and the quiet that settles where noise used to be. The strip is quietly shrinking, right now, this month, this quarter. Every closure that doesn't make headlines, every restaurant that just disappears between visits, every club that reduces hours, every show that ends without replacement, every section of casino floor that goes dark. The contraction is constant, the hollowing is ongoing. The strip is becoming less of itself with every passing month. And the worst part? It's quiet, invisible unless you're paying attention. The buildings still stand. The lights still flash. The illusion of scale persists. The marketing still promises the same Vegas it always promised. But the reality behind the illusion is shrinking. The substance inside the shell is evaporating, and the shrinking has only begun. The spiral is still spinning, the contraction is still contracting. The strip is getting smaller, and nobody knows where the bottom is. Hit subscribe to track the contraction. I'm watching the closures that don't make news, the reductions that happen quietly, the square footage that goes dark without announcement, the shrinkage that happens in real time while the strip pretends nothing has changed. Drop a comment. What have you noticed missing? What restaurant closed? What show disappeared? What club reduced hours? What was there on your last visit that's gone now? Because the strip wants you to believe it's as grand as ever, that nothing has changed, that the illusion is reality. But the reality is shrinking, piece by piece, month by month, the strip getting smaller while the buildings stay the same size. The hollowing continues, the density dies, the abundance becomes memory, and the strip becomes a shell of what it was built to be. I'll see you in the next one.